All right, welcome to another episode of the Pitura Pit Stop. I am joined here with Drew Lerner, Senior Meteorologist with World Weather Inc. Incorporated out of Kansas City. Thanks for taking the time to join me.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so we're here at Crop Connect, and we just sat in on a session on kind of what the outlook of weather is, and there was a lot of laughs and a lot of chuckles and not too many concerned faces walking out of the room. Can you share a little bit about why that was?
Because we don't know what we're talking about? I don't know. Actually, I think the reality is that there's hope that we're going to break out of this long, multi-year cycle of dryness in the prairies. It will take a while to do, areas out in southern Alberta. It's going to take a lot longer to get relief there, but we are going to be at least encouraged by the patterns that's setting up right now. So I think there's reason to smile a little bit.
Sure.
But it should be a nervous smile. This way, everything, we don't know what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
So we got to be careful.
So you mentioned a nervous smile. We're seeing a bit of a transition right now out of El Nino into the springtime. What's that transition period look like, and what should growers expect with those changes?
Yeah, if we are just going to get out of El Nino, just that alone should open the door for some timely precipitation to come around. It doesn't mean that we're going to suddenly get good soaking rains, though, because El Nino is not the only game in town. The other factors are, we have this lunar cycle, or what I call the 18-year cycle, that plays out, and it is still hanging on, and it's still going to restrict the amount of precipitation that's going to occur. So El Nino weakening is good because it's been responsible for all the hot, dry winter we've had. Having it weaken or go away will open the door of opportunity for some moisture to show up. But the 18-year cycle is going to kind of push it down, kind of keep it minimal. So there's still going to be need for regular occurrence precipitation of higher volume in order to get us over the hump in the areas that are really hurting for moisture.
So you mentioned 18-year cycle. Looking back, are we matching up with the 18-year cycle coming out of the winter of 23 and moving into the spring of 24?
There is a lot of interesting parallels. The year 2005-06 seems to be where we're paralleling most significantly right now. Our autumn and the first half of winter look an awful lot like 2006, 2005-06.
So what was the early spring and transition weather patterns of 2006 like?
Yeah, usually, not usually, but in 2006 we started getting a little bit more moisture in the eastern part of the prairies as we went from mid-February into the end of March. But the west didn't do so great. We ended up putting some snow on the ground in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. We've kind of seen a little hint of that, but I think we'll see more of it. But in 2006, we didn't do real well fixing the moisture deficits out to the west. Part of the deal was it was still very warm. And so they did get some snow, but it didn't stick around. It melted. And it was the same kind of process we've been seeing where, it snows and then we melt and then we snow again. And that's actually a good scenario. So if we can do that with some kind of volume of snow, then, maybe we'll be sitting prettier than what we expect.
What was the summer of 2006 like for Western Canada?
2006 was a good mixed year. There was I think we got rain to occur in just about all areas at one time or another. There was some areas that got a little bit more than others. I urge a little caution here because we don't want to just talk about 2006. There's other factors that play in. But when we talked about 2005-06, we were talking about the upper air wind flow pattern being very similar. And that yes, our precipitation and temperatures in December and January were certainly very much like that of 2005-06. But as we go into the growing season, there's going to be some other influences that may kind of mess with that. But just from an 18-year cycle perspective, it was a good growing season in 06.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fair. And we mentioned El Nino at the beginning. If and when we transition to La Nino, what should growers come to expect with the outcomes of that moving into the summer and the fall?
Yeah, if we go into a La Nina, it's going to be better for the prairies in general. That's just the blanket statement that I can make.
Sure.
There will be more moisture around. Now, some folks believe that La Ninas are bad for the prairies. Now, they are bad if they persist over multiple years. But when we move from an El Nino to a La Nina, it's usually beneficial. We get an increase in precipitation to take place, and in a case like this where we got so much moisture deficit, it's going to be positive for us. Now, the rate in which we move from El Nino to La Nina has a lot to say about how much moisture you get. The quicker you transition, the more rain you get. So there's NOAA in the U.S. Has predicted a very quick transition. If they're right, we could see a fairly abundant moisture pattern in the summer.
Early on.
But I don't know that I'm ready to buy into that. I don't want your folks to go and
not yet. Don't make
that.
marketing decisions off
That's
that
right.
yet. Yeah.
That's right. I do think that there will be more moisture around, and we will do better. Because the same bias is there if we transition slowly into La Nina. It's just not as aggressive and as fully replenishing as it would be.
Immediate. No, that's fair. Well, that'll be potentially a different scenario than we've seen with harvest across Western Canada the last couple of years, if those trends continue.
Yeah, that's right. And we've been spoiled now. I don't know how many years in a row in different places across the prairies we've had really good harvest weather. And as we bring this droughty pattern to an end, we're going to start seeing more moisture around. So we should expect to see a little bit more disruption to our harvest. I am not ready to tell you that we're going to have a rain out and we're going to have all kinds of crop damage because it rains too much, but we are not going to have the same level of dryness for weeks on end like we've had.
Yeah, fair. Well, that's great. Thank you for the update. Thank you for taking the time. We're going to jump into our rapid fire sessions. Drew, what are you most excited about in the ag industry from what you see from your seat as an agriculture meteorologist?
Well, the number one thing is just the fact that we are able to generate higher yielding crops that are subjected to stress. It's just amazing to me how much higher the yields have been in recent decades in years that have been extremely stressful, and we've done really well. So I'm very anxious to see where we're going with that. And from a weather perspective, the development of AI can really be helpful because we'll be able to handle a larger volume of data and be able to assess, hopefully forecast, data or historical data much quicker and to a more higher level of completion, which will be really helpful.
Meaningful. Yeah, so what I heard was AI and a plug for seed genetics is what I heard here as well.
That's right.
Unscripted plug as well. Number two, what year for Western Canada, what previous year do our current weather patterns look to be trending towards that's happened in the past?
Yeah, 2000, well, you gotta be careful here. Speaking in a general manner, where we transition out of multi-year drought, it would probably be 2002-03. That would be somewhat similar.
Okay.
Just from the mere fact that we've had persistent drought for multiple years and we're going to have an opportunity to break away. So that makes that year a little bit more of interest. But the year 2006, we've already kind of talked about a little bit. We're already seeing some parallels there. So kind of a melding of those two, I would think, would probably work really well.
So everyone's flipping back in their notebook to see what those years were for them.
That's right.
And finally, what skill set has allowed you to be successful in your very successful career as an ag meteorologist, Drew?
God in my pocket, right? It's got to be God. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. There's no reason. I worked for a corporation for 21 years and didn't know my, behind from a hole in the ground, and that company went bankrupt, and I was forced to go to my basement. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of miracles that came out of my basement. I've never programmed anything, and I was able to create what I've got today, and it's just absolutely amazing. So there's no data set. It's pure luck, right? So
fair enough. Well, thank you for your time, Drew.
You
Take care.
bet. Have a great day.